Welcome to Homespun. This is a created weekly video produced by Mark DeLapp for the Bladen Journal. We bring to you guests from Bladen County for the incredible people of Bladen County. There may be information, entertainment, songs, and so much more. Be sure to tune in each week as we find the best of the best that our community has to offer. And now, your host, Mark DeLapp.
Well, we're here today with kind of a legend in this area, Ron Taylor, and he's the owner of Mil Vineyard. And Ron, I want you to take us back and tell me where it all started for you. Where were you born and where were you raised?
Well, this is where I was born and raised, right here. I grew up on this same dirt and land, right down the road here, just a few feet where I was born. And that house was built in the early 30s, I think. And then when I was about 11 years old, we moved here to this brick house right here at Mil Vineyard. Where we're sitting right now is where Mother's vegetable garden used to be.
Okay.
And it was plowed with a mule. And the last wood-fired tobacco barn that I know of in this part was sitting right out there beside the highway where they fired it with wood to cure the tobacco.
Sure.
Everybody in this area was tobacco farmers.
Right. Did you do any cotton down here at all?
We did some cotton,
Because I know you get down to Bladenboro and they had the big cotton down there.
People say that I can't remember, but when I was 2 or 3 years old, my mother was picking cotton, and I was in the field, and the playpen for kept me in was a bushel tub, one of these metal tubs, out in the field. So, I go back a ways right here at this area, and we grew tobacco, and we raised hogs and peanuts and farming, but Daddy was a welder.
Okay.
Daddy used to work back in the 30s in the Baltimore shipyard.
Sure.
He left when he was a teenager and went to Baltimore, and he always told me the many stories. He'd go down in the hatch of a ship, and he'd follow a rope down in the ship, and he'd sit there and weld until lunchtime, and he couldn't see a thing except what they were welding. And he'd come out for lunch, and he'd go back the rest of the day.
Welding the seams in the ship.
Welding.
Yeah.
In the ship, making ships. That's
Right.
And then, here when he came back home, he had the first electric welder. There's a picture of it inside here, right down here at the old house in the backyard. And at that time, there was beginning to be a few metal implements and a few tractors in the area and that kind of thing. So Daddy was somewhat of a mechanic and a welder, and he kind of kept repairing things for the local farmers. As time went on, he got a massive Ferguson tractor dealership, and we were right here at Dublin. So now where we're living, we're on the west side of the Cape Fear River, but we're on the White Oak Telephone Exchange. And even before there was a telephone exchange in this area, my daddy put in a telephone system of his own, and that was back in the early 40s. And everybody in this neighborhood through here had one of those old crank telephones that my daddy had put in. And so, we had a big family, but what you see the results of here today is the results of a lot of different people.
Sure.
Big family, people wanting to see prosperity in the community and working together. And my brothers and Denise is my niece, and she's the boss today.
Sure.
So she looks after everything, and then we got a tremendous good staff.
Right.
I tell everybody that I go to Taylor Manufacturing every morning, and I stay there till I make everybody yield. Then I leave, and I come to Mil Vineyard, and I try to make this crowd yield, and then I leave here and go and start doing other things for the day.
Sure.
But we're very fortunate to have had the staff of people and the family that's working. We got the fourth generation of the Taylor family now. Denise is the third, and her daughter is the fourth. And of course, my wife and I, we're still very involved with all of it, and particularly the ice business that we're doing now has become a big thing as an offshoot as we diversified. Back in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s, Taylor Manufacturing had over 500 employees. And with the demise of the federal tobacco program in the mid-90s or so there, it like stopped tobacco production. The health issues are concerned.
Right.
There's still a lot of tobacco grown, but nothing like what used to be.
Sure.
So there was a period of time right there in the early 90s at Taylor Manufacturing that before Smithfield got going, we were probably one of the largest employers in the county. Plus, when that event took place, we had 350 people that I laid off one day. And that was a heart-wrenching, heartbreaking experience. So we had to diversify.
Right,
So
right.
We still had a big staff, and we're building that Taylor water stove, the outside wood-fired furnace that was sold all over America.
Right.
And it did real well right on up to a few years ago, and then the environmental concerns of anybody burning smoke of any shape, fashion, or form became a health issue also. So
Yeah, I think I can remember that. My uncle, like I said, he ran the big hardware store up in Iron River, Wisconsin, and most of my family was up there. But what year did you get? What year were you born, Ron?
pardon me?
What year were you born?
I was born in 52.
52.
So
Okay.
I'm 73 years old now, and a lot of water's been under the bridge, and living here in this area and growing up in a fine community. I really like the people that we've always dealt with and have so many friends and employees, and Elizabethtown, Dublin area has been home, and all over the whole county we dealt with people. In the tractor business, we were selling tractors and implements to everybody. So your customers were your friends, and still today with Divine Foods, which is an offshoot of Mil Vineyard here, a lot of those folks were our customers from the past for cotton or in tobacco.
Right.
And so they had to reinvent themselves. They had to diversify. So now they're growing fruits and vegetables and that kind of thing. And so, that period of diversification, we got into the ice business and we got into Mil Vineyard. There was this surge of interest in growing muscadine grapes. And there was no equipment manufacturer in the east here. Anyway, most of the equipment today is made in across the pond somewhere in Italy or somewhere. But so we made my brother Oren, he was the brain of the crowd. He was the mechanic. He and Dad were the ones that could take a welding rod and a few wrenches and make about anything in the world. But Oren was particularly talented at doing anything you wanted. If you tell Oren about it, he could get right down here on this cement floor with a piece of chalk, and y'all could dry it out. And in a few days, he'd have it built for you.
That's like my grandfather. He worked for A.O. Smith for many years as a tool and die maker, and he was the go-to guy there in Milwaukee. And they made everything from silos to I can remember him one time taking an old 5-gallon metal can and made what was called a cedar heater for us when we were out in the outdoors. That was eventually patented, but that was his initial idea, and he'd put sterno in a little compartment on the inside, and so it kept you warm when you were sitting there waiting for your deer to come along. So it was we grew up in a different era, Ron.
Well, that's the same way. My mother in the old house down there, we had just the old kerosene heater in the house, and Mother would put brick bats on it and let them get warm. And she worked out here at the peanut plant at Dublin. Daddy was instrumental in getting the peanut, since we know them today, started here in this community with the first commercial peanut dryer and all the associated equipment would go in with it. Daddy was part of building that, and he worked with Houston Brisson and then Dixon Brisson, which is Dixon's the mayor's father, Sylvia's dad. And they're all related. You better watch what you say in this community because everybody here is kin.
Yeah.
And proud of it.
Yeah,
we got
absolutely.
a good big family, and all of them have done well over the years and worked hard-working people. So we've continued to make that grow. When they first started the Big Five Trading Company back in the 40s at Dublin out here, it was the King family, the Carroll family. Ballard Carroll was Carroll's Trucking was my mother's brother, and then there was Gaston King had the hardware store, and Wilford King had the SO distributorship, and I think Houston and Dixon started the peanut business. So as it evolved and grew, then the Brissons took the peanuts and went one way, and the hardware store went with Gaston King. And Ballard Carroll took the two old trucks they had and started Carroll's Transfer.
Sure.
And Daddy took the implements and moved right there past where the Dollar General's at in Dublin now. He had a piece of property and started selling the Ferguson tractors.
Sure.
And then they worked 5.5 days back in that day.
So your dad owned the implement store down here in Dublin.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we were a Ferguson tractor dealer.
Sure.
Until '58, and then Massey Harris and Ferguson merged, and Potter Motor Company in Elizabethtown, which is right there where Kentucky Fried Chicken's at now. Mr. Potter had the Massey Harris dealership, and Daddy had the Ferguson dealership. So when they merged to Massey Ferguson gave the franchise to Daddy if he would move to the county seat. And so right where my office is at now, across from the primary school there, is where we moved to. And bought that building and property from Mr. Gooden, the Gooden family here in the community. And it was a grocery store and a gas station and a repair garage for automobiles and that kind of thing. The old pit that you used to drive over to have your oil changed is still in the floor. I just covered it up. So it's still down there.
Yeah, that's the building you're in down there.
That's the building we're in now. That's where my office is at. We built all that other property there on our campus.
Now, where was the Taylor manufacturing plant where they manufactured the heaters and everything?
Right there where my office is now, beside the Board of Education. Okay. All those buildings back there. We got 200-some thousand square feet of manufacturing facility. Nice state-of-the-art equipment with the lasers and welders and overhead cranes and all that stuff. So we literally, like I said, you could tell Orrin Taylor what you wanted, and
he'd make it for you.
He could make anything. I know of farmers that came in there with ideas that they wanted developed, that they thought they knew of an implement that worked, and I've seen them get down on the floor with a piece of chalk, like I said, and draw out that implement. And then, a few weeks' time, our staff, we had a great staff of engineers and people to build this equipment and know how to program all those lasers and that kind of stuff to cut it out and that kind of thing. So Lucille and Miller Taylor, they were mama and daddy to a lot of people. Matter of fact, my mother, her siblings, all but one, I think, come and live with them because their parents died early.
Right.
So in that little 6-room house right there was several families. The first one, I remember my mother saying now, when they first moved here from the other side of Dublin, there's an old shack right here behind this building we're sitting at now at Mil Vineyard.
And that's where they raised you.
That's where my oldest brother was born.
Okay.
Mama and Daddy, and I think it was M.B. and Eunice Carroll, stayed in that 2-room shack. And I hear my mother say right now that you can look through the ceiling and count the stars, and you can look through the cracks in the floor and count the chickens under the house. So they were there several years, and then they moved down to this other house that must have been built in about 1932 or 3.
Sure.
And it's still there, and it's one of the properties that we fixed up, and Denise rents now along with the brick home here where I was raised.
Well, it's you've always been involved. Your family has a rich history of manufacturing and providing anything that people were looking for, providing a need. And my first question is, how did we get here to Mil Vineyard, and how did we get from tobacco and peanuts to grapes?
Well, again, as tobacco was a cash crop, tobacco was a money crop.
Right.
And as that crop evaporated, for all lack of better terms, and the federal tobacco program ceased to exist.
Right.
And it went to strictly a contract basis, that if you wanted to farm, you had to get a contract with one of the companies. So we had all this capability of building equipment, And you know, we were looking for things to do, to build, that we could build and sell and survive.
Yeah.
So there's this interest in muscadine grapes, and everybody was talking about grapes. Duplin Winery was really growing at that time, and so there was nobody that had an automatic machine for harvesting grapes. So we built a machine, Owen built a machine, took one of the old tobacco harvester frames and made a machine to harvest grapes with. Probably 40 years before then, he and Dad had built a machine to pick blueberries with. That was when the blueberries were coming into Bladen County.
Right,
so
right.
We were in the equipment business, and any interest in a piece of equipment, you know, folks would always talk to Orrin Taylor and Miller Taylor and try to get something going to satisfy, to scratch their itch that they
Sure,
had.
sure.
And so that's how the grape business started. And so, again, my dad had always experimented with everything he done. So we had farmers. I know the Harrelson family right at the top of the hill out of Elizabethtown there. Mr. George Harrelson, when Daddy had a machine that he wanted to try to see if it would work in the tobacco field,
Right.
Mr. George say, go ahead, go to it. And we'd go out there, we may tear up a half-acre tobacco. And he never charged a penny or anything. He was glad to see somebody working on developing machinery that would harvest tobacco. So we got a tobacco harvester made, and then we had right here on this farm was our research farm. And you know, we're strict Baptist people here. My mother, when the church doors opened, her and Daddy was one of the 11 couples that built the Baptist church in Dublin here. But
First Baptist?
Yes.
Okay.
But when Daddy thought he needed to be in the field experimenting with tobacco, I can hear my mother hollering now. And my daddy out there on his hands and knees with a stick and turning, trying to make something crop tobacco. I can hear Lucille saying, Miller, you better get out of that field and go to church. You're going to lose everything you got working on Sunday. And so that's the environment that we grew up in.
Sure,
so,
sure.
You know, then we had grapes, so I had to do something with some grapes. So I got hooked up again with Duplin Winery to grow some grapes for them. And I was very instrumental in getting the agritourism industry in North Carolina started. I promoted that with the legislature and our friends in the legislature and that kind of thing, to get agritourism and to get wine available that could be sold here in a dry county in a farm winery.
Now, I have to ask you a question here. What did your mom think about growing grapes to make some wine here?
Well, Mother was deceased at that time.
Okay.
But if she saw how beautiful it is, that's one reason I try to keep the place so pretty.
Right.
Because I feel like Lucille would be proud to see all the beauty that we got here, you know.
Yeah, and it is beautiful. And like I said, you know what, running the 5K just opened my eyes to a lot of the back things here. The running on the grapevines was a little bit rough, but it was beautiful. And between that and your light show that you do every December, I mean, every time we'd get a new family member come in, we'd say, we have to take you over to Lumil and see the light show. So you have diversified into something very beautiful here.
Well, I appreciate it, and it's been out of necessity, trying to figure out how to pay the taxes on what the government says I own, you know, because when the tobacco went, it hurt a lot of people in this area, and it put a lot of people out of work. And you know, a lot of times it was very depressing to families that's all they'd ever done, you know. But I was trying to see an opportunity somewhere where we could still keep some of our employees busy, keep our equipment busy, and hopefully make a profit at the same time, you know. So we planted grapes, and we started out in the old barn back there before we built this building, you know. So we just had an old shed out there and just walled in a little place. And we opened that thing. It was the most popular place in Bladen County. Everybody in Bladen County would come to Mil Vineyard to see what we had and what we were doing. The community college out here had its big annual event here for years. And, you know, I can remember the first one we had. The mud was so bad you couldn't hardly get in and out of the building back there. And then when we built this building right here, the president of the college was over here the day before. They were supposed to have the big event the next night. He was over here scratching his head and I was just painting the building, whether we'd have the event or not. But we did have it, and we had a tremendous crowd, and we've had tremendous crowds since then. We have weddings and parties every week, and just got a lot going on at Lou Mill.
Well, I remember the first time coming to Elizabethtown when I was candidating for the position out here, and it so happened that they had the chamber event that night. So this is actually the first building that I really got a good look at in this area, and just fell in love with the people and fell in love with the area, and we just, my wife and I looked around and we were just amazed at all the things that this area had to offer. So what you're saying is this: is all you have to do is get an idea. From that point, and you learned this from your Uncle Orrin.
My brother.
Your brother.
Orrin was my brother.
Orrin was your brother.
Yeah.
See, I had an Uncle Orrin.
Okay.
And so your brother Orrin said.
That's Denise's dad.
Yeah. See, I could. He probably looked around and said, I could build that.
Oh yeah.
So all you guys had to do is come up with an idea.
I didn't worry about whether he could build it or not. If I'd get an idea, I knew he could build it, and that gave me the confidence then to go out and sell it. So he was always done the hard work in developing these ideas that anybody might have. And so my philosophy has always been unseen, untold, unsold. You got to show it and tell it and sell it.
Well, that's
so
good.
that's the reason I started going to all these shows all over the country. We were at the state fair, I think, for 40 years with our equipment, our cotton and tobacco equipment and all, selling equipment, wood stoves and that kind of thing. Then we went to these other states, Wisconsin being one of them, Minnesota, where they had those big farm progress days.
Right.
We would go to these shows and sell equipment everywhere, you know. And a lot of times after I sold it, I'd take an old truck and drive and deliver it to them myself too. So that's in the stage the business was growing, you know. But
well, you know, we had the farm in mid-Wisconsin in a rural area, so I can remember my grandfather taking me to those shows.
Yeah.
At that point, so was everything under Taylor Manufacturing at that point?
Yeah, Taylor Manufacturing at that point.
Okay. And when did the actual stoves and everything, when did the manufacturing actually quit for Taylor?
We've been about 8 years ago now.
Okay.
It just kind of phased out. Sales have dropped off. We were putting more emphasis on the ice business, growing the ice business in our diversification mode.
Sure.
You know, I took these bulk tobacco barns and made an ice vending machine out of them. So we had, like, there's one sitting in the parking lot at Taylor Manufacturing there. We had them at White Lake, and still got them at Clinton and Roseboro and St. Paul's and Lumberton and places, you know.
So those are your ice facilities?
Yeah.
Huh.
So again, that was part of the diversification in this tobacco demise situation, you know, trying to figure out something to build and something to make.
Right.
And we had a customer down in Florida, down in Georgia that I'd sold numerous pieces of equipment to for cotton module builders and cotton buggies. And he had at the farmer's market there in Moultrie, Georgia, he had an old ice machine and a vending belt that he was setting a paper bag on and vending it. So I came back and took a tobacco barn. Instead of putting a heating unit in it, put a refrigeration unit in it, and started building those things. And they really did good. We sold a lot of ice.
Sure.
And still do. And plus since then in our diversification, we've probably got 250 customers, that convenience stores and that type of folks that we got ice boxes sitting at their store and that kind of thing, you know. So.
Now, let me ask you a little bit too, Ron. You know, your mother was long gone when a lot of the vineyard became popular.
Oh, yeah.
And why here? Was the soil conducive to muscadine grapes here?
Everywhere in this part of the world, anything that would grow tobacco good would grow muscadine grapes. This sandy soil, muscadine grapes love this hot, humid climate. They have to have water, need some water, so we irrigate. Everything I got is irrigated, you know. But again, they like this type of environment, this type of soil. And they grow wild and proliferately in the fields. And I remember when we were cropping tobacco right there in that field where those grapes are over there, a lot of times in the fall of the year, we couldn't wait to get to the end of the road to pick grapes out of the trees where the grapes were growing, you know.
Sure.
So, you know, again, it kind of evolved into things. And Lou Mill Lucille and Miller was just a natural for the name of it. These 4 grapevines right here are my mother's grapevines.
From the original vine.
Yes.
Wow.
Her garden was right here where this building's at, and she had this row of grapevines right here. So this building, don't mess with my grapevines. This building is built around those grapevines. And then my son, with his architectural desire and architectural talents, he's the one that kind of laid out this building here to be around these vines and to have the gift shop on the back overlooking the lakes and that kind of thing.
And when did the building go up?
This building has been here probably 18 years now.
Okay.
Something like that, 17 or 18 years.
Well, what a great idea to not only have the gift shop and the wine tasting room and the ballroom that's in here. I mean, it's just absolutely incredible. And now I see there's a lot more marketing going on, as far as marketing for weddings and marketing for events and
yeah. We were the first in the county with used to be everybody got married in the church.
Yeah.
And so then that was kind of a little bit different when we started here. Now there's 8 or 10 different venues in the county, and all of them doing well.
Sure.
Marketing to wedding couples and parties and anniversaries and that kind of thing.
Sure.
We keep so much going on though. We're agritourism is a big part of our business. Another side of Mil Vineyard was Divine Foods. So.
Yeah, how did that get started?
Well, one of the ladies that was working for us, still works for us, she's the lady, Pam Durden, that manages the light show now. She was working here and got her to make some jelly for us. And people started buying the jelly, and then everybody wanted more jelly, and then the other grape farmers wanted somebody to make jelly for them. So I found this guy that was manager of a plant in Georgia, and I hired him and brought him up here to start Divine Foods. We had nothing but an idea.
And what year was this?
That must have been 15 years ago or so.
Okay.
And so when he'd come up here to look us over and check us out, like you said you did when you came here.
Right.
He pulled up right out here and he saw all those grapevines out there, and his wife got out of the car and said, divine. And I thought she was referring to the little guy on television said, the plane.
Well, how cool is that?
That stuck. That divine stuck, and that's where Divine Foods was started.
Well, it's twofold. It's divine, which is a biblical term, and then
perfect for my mother.
Yeah, and then the vine that you're growing out here, the fruit of the heart of everything that all the way back to the Old Testament that they grew that and they made their own wine and things like that.
And what's really promoted the growth of muscadine grapes have been the health benefits.
Yeah.
There's been all kinds of studies, and there's more and more all the time espousing the virtues of the muscadine grape for its nutraceuticals and antioxidants and that kind of thing. There's all kinds of studies out there. So we have muscadine grape seed pills that we sell. We have literally had doctors send their customers up here with a prescription for them to buy muscadine grape juice and tell them to drink it. They're not saying wine. We have 100% muscadine grape juice. And it, by the way, we call it alcohol-free wine. Lucille's choice.
Sure.
After my mother, because she didn't drink.
Well, that's my wife and I live by your muscadine juice. Every time we get a little bit older, we have more sound effects every time we get out of bed in the morning. And I'll tell you what, that stuff has been a lifesaver. And we thought sometimes, well, maybe it's the climate we're in, and we thought, well, no, we've been drinking that Mil grape juice, and that might have been the thing that did the trick.
It'll help. Everybody says, I got people that swear by it. So,
sure.
Again, just go back to the making of everything, just like I was talking about this gentleman and all moving. You see, I don't do anything. Our staff does a lot. We've got good people. I've got Allie Hood that's managing of Divine Foods. Got Vern Kent that's a plant manager at Taylor Manufacturing now, and all the staff in these different businesses that we have our sales staff promoting different parts of the business. I could just go down the list,
Sure.
name of people that are great individuals that I and we depend on to keep the ball rolling, and they're doing a great job.
Well, I personally worked with both Denise and Kayla, and you've got some real heavy hitters there.
Oh, with us. And they're not just visiting; they're spending money and enjoying the products they're getting.
Right.
And they come back.
Well, coming from Florida and working in Chicago and Los Angeles, you couldn't touch half of the stuff here for the price that you guys are charging here. And I know that everything is changed according to the economy of the region. But what a great deal here as far as buying things and the wine and the alcohol. And my wife and I will look at a bill after we're done eating, and we'll look after a couple glasses of wine. Chicago, Florida, that's $220, for that. Here we almost had a heart attack in a good way when we looked at some of the prices here. It's the optimal place.
But again, that and we had the accommodations. People rent our facility to have an event. We got cabins here that we got 12 cabins and the 2 houses that we rent, and it's really accommodating for a young couple that wants to get married and have guests from out of town come in to stay. But we have guests in our cabins every night. Every weekend they're full.
Sure.
If you're gonna get a weekend cabin, you better book it in advance.
Right.
We'll have 1 or 2 or 5 or 6 every night during the week. And we, the people that work in the community or these factories that bring people in to work at their factories, they promote us and they send their employees to us, and government officials coming through the area for whatever reason, they come and stay in a cabin.
I know Denise ships me off an email every once in a while. She says we got a cabin open this weekend, and of course we get it posted up right away on Facebook, and hopefully we keep them filled and we keep the place running. And
I appreciate it.
How long are you going to be staying in this business?
Well, I hope I can keep going till I'm about 85.
There you go.
I might sit down and let the rest of them take more. Of course, like I said, that the staff runs it now.
Sure.
If I got an idea, they check with me regularly every day and maybe several times a day.
Right.
And my wife, she's making sure that she's right there every day too. So one or the other of us usually have our eyes on what's going on.
Sure.
But you don't have to do that with the people that we got in place. These ladies that work here in the gift shop are just fantastic, and the visiting clientele, customers, they love them.
Yeah.
And
what's your wife's name, Ron?
Vicky.
Vicky. VICKI.
VICKY.
Why? Okay. 50-50 shot. I missed it.
But yeah, Vicky and I still are very involved with it, and we're a good team because we both, if we get a chance to go do something, we both like doing the same thing. We're both hoarders and collectors, as you can see. We just we're going to auction sales. She and I, in this demise of the tobacco program, we had a big building where we were building the Taylor water stove over in Chadbourne, North Carolina. And after we closed it down and moved it back to Elizabethtown, she and I went in there and put in a big flea market. And we had a tremendous crowd every weekend at the flea market. We had bands free. We had Percy Sledge there and all kind of people just free for our customers.
Sure.
So we'd have just hundreds and thousands of people come to Southeast Flea Market.
People after our own heart, man.
Yeah.
I just, like I said, growing up in the rural part of Wisconsin, those flea markets were things that, we lived for on the weekends. And my brother's got a house that it could be a museum because of all of his artifacts. I think he's got the world's largest collection of Pez.
Of what?
Pez, those little Pez candy dispensers.
Yeah.
He's got every one, I think, known to man. And you walk in and he's got the 1950s Aqua refrigerator in his kitchen with the linoleum table and the red chairs around it. And, it's just, but that's the way we grew up. And
Well, you tell him I want that stuff.
okay.
It's right funny. I'll be going through the country sometime, and I'll see an old barn with a lot of signs on or something.
Sure.
I like signs. metal signs, old sign, antique signs. And so every once in a while, got time, I'll stop, and if there's someone there, I introduce myself and get to talking and carrying on and ask them, won't sell any of those signs. No, I ain't gonna sell none of my signs. That's people got them.
Sure,
They
sure.
like them. So before I leave, I take one of my business cards out of my pocket and I hand it to them. And I say, well, give this to your wife so when you pass on, she can call me if she wants. I had one guy get mad at me one day, but I've done that several times. I say, yeah, give this to your wife.
Yeah, I remember the old theater, the outdoor theater closed in our town, and the big starlight neon sign was being torn down. My brother took that and put it in his basement. Now he's got hooked up little speakers. So you're sitting like in the Starlight Theater in his little basement.
At this garage right here at Dublin, I was talking about where Daddy's, after he moved out of the yard out there to Dublin, and of course they had a big 5 trading company intermittently there, but they worked until Saturday. The mechanics and people worked there at the tractor place in
Right.
Dublin until lunch on Saturday, and then they cleaned the floor, cleaned the shop out, and showed movies in there.
Oh.
So it was a movie theater, And then, 3 or 4 years after that, moved down here to going out of this town on the left there where that peanut drying in equipment and old
Right.
equipment is. And Daddy put in a drive-in theater. So we had a drive-in theater here in the community.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And so, and right there at that shop, we were a Exxon gas station.
Okay.
And my first experience with ice, we had a little block building out there that crosses had the ice plant at Elizabethtown, down there behind. I don't know if you ever heard of it or not.
Right.
But anyway, they had a truck that go around and deliver these big 300-pound blocks of ice.
We thank you again for visiting with us at Homespun. This program is a creation of Bladen Journal editor, Mark DeLapp, and is copyrighted by the Bladen Journal. If you would like more information, you can contact us at the Bladen Journal. Have a blessed day.